out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hello, Tim.
Well, hello, Ryan.
And happy Easter to you too, Tim.
Oh, yeah. Happy Zombie Jesus Day.
I know you love bunny rabbits and have like 53 little bunny rabbits near and dear to you running around your place.
I'm wearing a Easter bunny outfit right now.
It's adorable.
Thanks.
Great. And happy about a week and a half, 2 weeks from Easter to you listening if you're listening to this live.
Yeah.
And happy future Easter if you just happen to be listening to this on some Easter in the future when we're here or long gone 400 years into the future.
You know, every moment from tomorrow on, they'll be expecting a future Easter.
What?
Yep. Think about it.
I'm not. All right. And welcome, as I said, wherever this may find you, whenever this may find you, to Dismembering Horror, the podcast where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
myself, Tim Maslin.
That's right. Well, what do we do here? Well, we dismember a horror film every week. But what does it mean to dismember a horror film? Well, let's see. Let's see about that. We talk about it, as we said. We break it down. We discuss it. We chop it up into pieces to better inspect it, and then put it all back together in the end. Hopefully, coming out for the better at the end of it. And we're very happy to have you here for all that. We wish we could hear you, but we can't. But just know you're here in spirit, and we thank you for being here with us.
You know what I think would be fun to do someday is have a what's that new thing? It's a like a talking forum app.
Clubhouse.
Yeah. What if we after an episode drops, like the day after an episode drops, we did a post-episode Clubhouse where we got to talk to other people about the episode.
Oh, just hear what everyone else thought. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah. I think we should try it someday.
Cool. Well, we'll hope to see you there then. Great. Well, what are we doing in the meantime? Why I didn't say what episode are we on? What episode are we on? We're just getting up there. We're on 138.
Ooh.
And for episode 138, we're talking about Night of the Demon from 1957, directed by Jacques Tourneur. Screenplay by Charles Bennett and Hal E. Chester, who also, I believe, produced it.
That's quite a name.
Which one?
Hal E. Chester.
He's quite a character too, presumably.
Really?
I watched the first minute of an interview with him from the 90s and didn't watch much more than that. But the lead, Dana Andrews, as we'll get into, was not crazy about old Hal.
Is that the dude?
Yeah.
He I don't think he was very crazy about being in this movie. We'll talk about it. But man, did he have a sour puss.
Yeah. Great. Well, to talk about it, we got to move along here. And I think we do that by starting with the trailer. Are you ready for that, Tim?
Man, I'll tell you what. I'm so ready the dog upstairs is barking.
Great. All right. Here we go again from 1957, Night of the Demon.
It has been written since the beginning of time that evil, supernatural creatures exist in a world of darkness. And it is also said, man can call forth these powers of darkness, the demons of hell.
It is the night of the demon.
And tonight is the night that Dana Andrews, as a daring scientist, defies the mysterious, murderous devil cult in a desperate battle against the demons of hell.
Oh, why did you drop the poker?
red hot.
Which isn't, you know. Oh, my boy, you're as pale as death.
There was something in here.
He has been chosen.
I've been chosen for what? What do you mean?
Today I found all the pages of my desk calendar torn out after October the 22nd. I know why. He died on the 22nd.
Well, all right, Tim. There
Masterpiece of macabre magic.
Macabre. Also known as Curse of the Demon, originally released here in the US, but we're going with Night of the Demon as it is more known. Anyways, Tim, I would sincerely love to know, per our rating system, would you, Tim, tell Tim to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
It's I'm gonna be a rent, but it was hurt by our old pal Dana.
Wow.
He really pissed me off. But mostly I think it's pretty good. I'm not a buy. I got, it kind of drones on at times of just like those kind of two people in a room scenes that I am like, all right, I get it, but let's go. So mostly, yeah. I mean, there's really good stuff in it. So
yeah.
It's a rent. I know this is your favorite movie of all time now. So
kind of. No. No, it's not as up there as some of them that we've watched, but boy, I did really love it. I'm curious to get more of your thoughts on Dana Andrews as Dr. John Holden, which we will, but he personified for me that like the stuffy guy who takes the whole movie to change his mind. It's exactly what you want,
I agree. He's doing that thing well.
Yeah.
But man, it's hard for me to stay in a thing when I dislike the lead that much.
Funny. Cool. I don't know, Tim. I guess I'll just say real life or death here. I know.
I don't know.
I just want it. It's like I would buy it, I guess. But I feel like I'd tell I don't know. I'm just going to say rent it for now.
All right.
But like a way high rent it,
Cool.
It was so good, Tim. It was so cool. I'm sorry that guy didn't kind of ruined it for you. That's too bad. Great. Yeah. Well, we'll get into it.
He reminds me of somebody. I think he honestly reminds me of a boss I used to have. and it made me not want to, I kept not wanting to watch him.
Wow.
I kept just being like, I hate you.
Wow.
So
I mean
not the fault of the movie.
That doesn't necessarily not work for I guess if you literally don't want to be watching them on screen no matter what, but
yeah, that's kind of what was happening.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
I like everybody else.
I love everyone else in this. It was so good. I do want to buy it, but I don't know. It's just too soon. It's too soon. I can't commit, Tim. All right. Well, let's talk about what happened in this. Try to give it a little summary. Say what exactly went down on the night of the demon.
Wow. Well, there's pagans and other stuff, but let's just say, for the sake of ease, you've got British Isle pagans, and they believe in demons and stuff, and they use runes.
Wait, but you're setting this up like, oh, okay, I'm picturing this like pagan cult. You don't actually see them ever, right? We just get their illustrious leader.
No, but it's established that they are the undercurrent. I don't mean that they exist in contemporary times. I'm saying that historically they're there.
Okay.
And they, that's sort of what the demon revolves around, or the curse of the demon revolves around, that back history.
Just making it clear, we neither start with nor end up with an on-screen group of pagans or devil worshippers at any time. That's
unfortunate. That would have been fun. But we do, we get a nice shot of Stonehenge, which is fun. And so you've got the first doctor who, God, man, the beginning was a little confusing and convoluted to me. But basically, this first doctor has kind of outed this other guy who's also a doctor. and like gotten him into this controversial sort of public controversy over like what he's doing and whether or not he's a bad dude. And then shockingly, that first Doctor meets an end at the hand of a very intense demon that comes out of the woods.
Yeah.
And it is so cool looking. So what we learn is that this doctor, the guy who died, his kind of like colleague apprentice dude who's from the States is coming over to give a talk. And God, let's see. What's the best way of saying this? Well, obviously he comes over and the doctor is dead, so he wants to figure out why. And that sets him on this pathway to the mix between the lore of like pagan, paranormal, magic stuff that he is a firm skeptic of. And I mean skeptic in not the way we look at a skeptic, but in the other way, which is he doesn't believe any of it's real. But he recruits sort of the niece of the doctor, and she's kind of a believer.
She's kind of also on the trail. There's no recruitment. She almost more
that's true. Yeah,
recruits him.
Yeah, and so they kind of they try to unfold the mystery of like what was really going on, and they realize that this other guy. What's the bad guy's name?
The bad guy, Dr. Julian Carswell. Yeah,
so that dude who's so cool, they figure he's being all weird and black magic-y and freaky, and the main guy, the lead guy, let's get
Holden.
These names right. Holden, right? Yeah. So Holden is all like, he's just jerking us around. He's just a jerk. But they figure out that. Oh, and Carswell curses him. He says, "You're going to die on this night."
I was going to say, meanwhile, we have a whole ticking clock,
right?
Maybe with a question mark element going
right.
on.
And so they go down this sort of fun mystery, let's figure out what's really going on thing, only to find that a curse can be passed to somebody through these runic symbols on a piece of parchment if you willingly accept them, if they're handed to you and you accept it, which becomes the key to the whole sort of story in the end. But ultimately,
Drag Me From Hell, I thought of.
Yes. Ultimately, they kind of, well, I mean, Holden sees the demon in the woods, literally sees the demon in the woods. He is attacked by a demon leopard. He gets all sorts of things that you would think should confirm his belief in that some supernatural stuff is happening, and he still is like, nah, he's just jerking us around.
Well, when he sees it in the woods, he only ever sees it in its smoke fireball form. It doesn't fully.
I guess that's true.
Released.
Okay, that's fair.
So as he says it, he's like, he set up some light and smoke show for me, and I can't believe right. I fell for it.
Yeah. So, knowing all of this and knowing that, or still kind of believing that this is all BS, he still slips the bad doctor the runic symbols in the end, which then, transfer the curse onto him. And then the demon shows up and kills him in a train yard. So, Holden's a murderer. That's the conclusion I came to.
Great. And with that conclusion, we can move on to our first section. I think that covers it all. Here we go. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm.
Smith. What worked? What worked for you?
So much worked, Tim.
I agree.
So much.
You know what my favorite part of this whole movie is?
Aspect or part, like scene?
Scene.
Ooh. Was it so many good ones? Was it the when he summoned the wind?
Yes. It is. That's the best part for me.
And I'd say it was one thing that was so cool about it was a full sequence.
Yeah.
Like it was really this neat little chapter or section of the film.
I love that part so much.
What did you love about it?
I just think, the whole idea of him being like, let me cast this spell and see if I can make you a believer. And then it just gets stormy and windy, and it's so windy. And it's so windy, and everybody's freaking out.
It's the perfect way for him to sort of test his magic to the skeptic in the traditional sense, like Holden, because it's just weather. You can always say, oh, it's just a freak weather occurrence. It's just a freak weather occurrence. And there's something here. This scene is a perfect way to also talk about one of my favorite aspects of the whole film, which was Dr. Carswell and the performance by Niall McGinnis. Anyway, just great, fun bad guy character. Anytime you can have scenes like that scene where it's almost like Bond talking to the Bond villain earlier on the movie when they meet, where it's you have the bad guy, the good guy, if you want to put it that way, conversing their themes, feeling each other out. They aren't an all-out immediate physical threat. They've got their motives are complicated. They're complicated. Just all that we learn about him in that scene does so much for his character too. He puts on annual clown shows, magic shows for kids. He lives on this massive estate with his mother. He acknowledges his interest in witchcraft and all the occult and all that. And it just conflicted, interesting character that makes you makes you sympathize with him just enough in a weird way too.
Yeah, and he also, that's the scene where he sets the curse.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry. He's already slipped Holden the runes in the library, but in this scene he declares Holden's imminent death. He says on the 28th he'll die. Right. In that scene. He also is doing, I think this is a really fun and smart directorial thing. Having him in this basically clown makeup, and he does most of the scene in the makeup, leading up to the wind. He's still in the makeup. He's got a fake nose, big rubber nose on, round clown nose. And he's got that grease paint style mouth on him and some eye stuff. And then they run inside after he summons the wind and they start talking. And he then slowly removes the makeup throughout the scene. And once he's finally got it off of him, then he sets the curse. I think that's right. And, but this idea of the clown aesthetic being removed is so, I just find it to be so cool. I mean, read into it what you want. There's just something really pleasant about the idea of this thing that's supposed to entertain kids being slowly removed to kind of reveal his, malevolence.
Right. Well, there's something really fiendish at play. Indeed, malevolence is a good word for it. And again, I'll put this in the context too of combining traits where we feel sympathy for him in a weird way because of it's this kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just our culture, probably is more it, but kind of feels sad. He's just living alone with his mother kind of thing. But we also see how much he loves her and he's good to her too. So there's that. And then where I'm getting to is we see he actually cares for these kids and putting on a show and it's a good cause. But then something a bit more sudden than removing the clown makeup is summoning that windstorm, sending the kids screaming in terror from all the furniture. I mean, it's a very forceful windstorm he summons. So the fact that he does that to the kids, just sort of just a flip of a coin, doing that right after entertaining them. There's something really just this is a hurt man right here. It gets to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like how at the top of that when he's introduced to essentially well, he's met Holden already, but he's introduced to Miss Harrington,
Joanna.
And he asks his mom to come over, and his mom is like, "Oh, you're not married, are you? My son's not married either." It's very like, "Oh, Mom, come on. Don't embarrass me in front of my new friends."
And it's meanwhile he's just all caught up in this intense witchcraft and like harnessing powers beyond his control. And
well, and I think that at the end of the day, he's not actually evil, and I don't find him to be actually evil. He's simply protecting his beliefs,
right? Because both, the uncle of Joanna, who's the one
Professor
who gets killed at the beginning.
Sorry, I called him Doctor.
Professor Harrington, who dies at the beginning, was basically on Carswell's trail. He was going to expose him in some sense. And then
It's
so
evil.
presumably, Holden's going to expose him too. So he's just defending what he knows basically in his life.
I think this is, as a Satanist at heart, I am offended at the depiction of this. That just because the guy believes in some pagan stuff does not make him evil, okay? And you're going to go drag him through the mud and maybe get him thrown in jail because the Christian believers can't handle something different than what they believe in.
Right.
How dare they? That's why I didn't like this movie. No, I did like the movie. That's why I didn't like Holden. He sucks.
Anything else from this extended sequence you wanted to highlight?
Man, the wind, like that. Just the way they kind of stand in the wind for like a really long time and like have this weird like he's not panicking, Carswell isn't, but like Holden is like oh, and then they cut to the kids and Joanna like flipping out. Like it's so good.
Yeah,
everything about it is just exciting. I kept thinking like, damn, they must have gotten some big fans for that scene.
They're just. Their exchange is great too. Just that little thing on snakes and ladders, him explaining the rules to it. And, it's good.
Did you play any versions of that growing up?
I played Chutes and Ladders at my grandma's.
That's what I had too.
Yeah, I'd never known it as Snakes and Ladders.
I've heard or seen it as that somewhere along the line.
It was actually, I hadn't thought about the game in a long time. And then looking at the board and seeing the kids playing it. Oh, wait, what is the thing he says? He's like, I actually preferred the snakes growing up. It was more fun to slide down than to climb up. That was a good Satanist sentiment. But
also, no kidding, it's always more fun to slide down, even though it's against the goal of the game. To me, I relate. I'm like, yeah, the game is stupid. Why would you need to get to the top when you can just slide? If for nothing else, but to have fun sliding down.
Well, that's what I just got a little like. It felt good in a horror movie to insert that game, is what I thought. Like you said, like the way you said it's stupid. It can also. It's kind of horrifying in a certain context too of like it distills like that what is a game down to like its essence in a way where it's like it's completely up to chance in this case. Right. There's zero strategy and you're either like at the roll of a die or spinning of the wheel having to go backwards or get to go up, and it's just like completely at the whim of chance. And it's like, what is the I get it, but I
love it as a metaphor for like heaven and hell too.
Yeah,
it's so great.
Which all we know is a metaphor for how we are feeling at any given moment too.
Yeah, it's cool. What else for you? What was your big favorite scene?
God, I mean that as a sequence, I think was my favorite. But if I want to shout out a next one here. It's probably have to be the seance scene.
Yeah.
It was I can't think of a better seance scene I've seen. It really had everything, Tim, for me. You had the all out supernatural hater with our quote unquote hero Holden going into it. And it's like from the get-go, you know, they aren't doing anything to sort of help their case to get him believe in it. They start by singing a song, which is like this very, it's like a high-timbered, as they say, it sort of helps welcome or that the spirits like it or whatever. So that was a cool, just kind of, it was like one of those things that you could laugh at it, but it was also just weird, you know, but also, I don't know, it felt like the kind of detail that maybe they do in real life with those things that just, okay, we're just watching it here.
But I love how they just start right in on it, right? Like they've barely even sat down and the women are like,
yeah. Well, the lights off lights are already off at that point. So we're already off to the races, really. And then to have, I mean, that was already great, but that was just the beginning, because then the guy who's the medium, like it's on his performance level that is so good, but then it's also just like, it's so eerie and weird how it happens, because they do such a good job of like dubbing in these voices, including like a little kid's voice, I think that sets really us off.
Quite unsettling.
Yeah, it's super unsettling. Exactly. And it goes on to do all these other different voices. And that combined with it just seems like such an authentic, deep performance, what he's doing there.
I think that scene in a way pissed me off, because I was like, man, Holden does not even give a second's chance or like of this being a possible real. He's like right up and out of there. He's like, this is bullshit.
Well, it's
stupid. Oh, it's just an act. We're out of here.
And it was so frustrating in that, I don't know, because in the moment, the actors who are all the committed characters doing the seance, like, you don't doubt that they're doing it for real at all. There's something, it's like, it's so hard to buy into it being faked when you're watching it in this movie. It's just so casually just steps into what looks like a real seance, which I don't think I've seen committed to film like this. It was really incredible.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then, like you said, we do get that frustration too, because we're so caught up in watching them do it when he flips on the light switch and they're like, oh no, it's bad. You don't want to bring someone out of a trance right away. And we see he kind of like gets out of it, the medium, and, you know, he has a little dizzy spell or something. So then just that fun, frustrating thing of, at the end of all that, Holden's just like, poppycock, you know.
Oh man, and the way that he grabs Joanna's arm and yanks her out of there, ooh, it made me so mad.
Yeah.
It's like, you suck.
Right. Just let her tell you what to do.
Are we supposed to like him?
I didn't think so. Not at all.
Because I didn't like him. As I've said now 10 times.
I thought he was funny in his own just stuck in his ways way. Like,
yeah.
Like in that, I wouldn't go as far as to say like there's a charm to it, but it was like, I get you, dude. You're being ridiculous, but like, whatever. You're like,
okay. Is this a thing that didn't work though? Yeah, I'm gonna hold on to this one.
Okay. Well, great seance scene. Great.
I like at the very end of this seance scene when like the mom is running after them and gets like completely stopped by her son opening a car door and blocking her way, and he's like, come with me, mother.
Right.
And she just sort of like stops and gets pulled into a car.
Oh, okay, son. Yeah. Not a specific scene, though. You could definitely allude to specific scenes within this. Is just the whole something that is usually your favorite part in these types of movies, Tim, and I'm just kind of like whatever, along for the ride. But I really got into and had fun with the mystery stuff in this one, the procedural questing that happens. Like it wasn't too much or too little. It wasn't so convoluted, like as far as, let's say, The Haunting of Julia we just watched.
Right.
It wasn't the story wasn't so dependent on it, like a lot of the giallos that we watch, where I just kind of lose track and then I'm lost the whole movie.
Mhm.
And just that it was straight up rooted in like old books and a guy who has turned catatonic. You know, those are the sort of main linchpins of the mystery, and it was cool stuff.
Yes, I think that whole what would you call that scene? The hypnosis scene, I guess you would call it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That scene and the discovery of the runes in his coat, that it's been slipped to him, and the cop describing all of the different versions of the demon in other cultures.
Yeah.
Those 3 scenes are like prime time mystery stuff. Now, I have thoughts about them that I think are on the side of what didn't work, but not actually about the scenes themselves. Like, the content of the scenes is so good and so like critical to this type of story working, because it's like, you know, you're peeling the onion back. You're getting these sort of deeper layers of what's going on. And it's lore, basically, which I love.
Yeah. Lore. It's a good word for it all. And that lore is perfectly set up with our intro to this film. It's the Wayhead, Stonehenge.
I have a great Stonehenge story for things of note.
Great.
Hold on to your butts.
I loved the storytelling that was happening with it. And I mean that in the sense of like literal voiceover happening over it. God, I just loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
Talking about ancient powers and witchcraft just to set us off. And then we're on to Joe Schmo, whatever, on the plane ride over. It was great.
Yeah, but man, I mean, talk about just diving right in, too.
With the demon?
Whoa! First of all, the effect is incredibly good.
Right? Well,
I was like, whoa, what are they? How are they? I mean, I know how they're doing it, but it looks so good.
Well, I kind of went on a journey with it. It was like working in ways and then working in other ways as it went on, kind of thing, where it was, I mean, yeah, it's just kind of great, like you said, where it's just right off the bat, we get, oh, there it is. And I think when I said to you when I handed the movie off, it would have been fun to watch it with you, was all that demon stuff was just so cool and so fun. Yeah. But the way it starts off, where we get the sounds of it, where it's just like this, you know, it's weird. It's almost kind of like sci-fi, tinny, like, I don't know, otherworldly sound. But yeah, I don't know how they were doing it as far as this, like the first little smoke circles that appear. And
there's like sparkler lights.
Yeah, it looked so eerie. And then when we first get its outline coming out of that, it's just coming at us out of the forest. I'm like, wow, it's sincerely eerie. This is so cool how they pull it off. So it was working for me in that sense. And then it went on and we full on like see the demon. Like, it's not just the little obscured kind of just outline of it or whatever. And it went from being like, ooh, this is eerie and scary, to this is just super cool. This is just awesome. Like, the way it looks, where it's transparent just that little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, they fully have all these different inserts of it, so we sort of get its limbs moving, and just the close-up of its face and just moving its mouth. It was just so fun. It was great. And just, I mean, there's that specifically. And then just the effect that it had for the rest of the movie, which it's not controversial, but it, like, a lot of people involved, or, you know, some of the fans of it, kind of like are take it or leave it with either seeing it all or how much they're seeing it. And for me, I'm just kind of like, it is what it is, and I love it for what it is. And versus the whole sort of like in we should have mentioned up front. This is our second Jacques Tourneur directed film. We also did Cat People, but like Cat People, where it's just all really left up to the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
This had it was interesting. It almost had its cake and ate it too.
Yeah,
because like it was so much so up front. So it's like the stakes were there, throughout. Well, and like we know it's going to come back at the end, but it doesn't until the way end. So
right, I think that's just it. Is saying, here's the thing. Now spend the rest of the movie waiting for the thing to show up again.
Yeah, really interesting. You don't see that happen a lot. Yeah, and it just made it so. Maybe that's where for me it was some of the fun frustration on Holden, where it's like we know it's real, we saw it. And rather than sort of having that safety of being able to identify with him and, maybe this, isn't all real. No, we're just waiting the whole movie for him to catch up.
What was that movie we watched? The other British... Well, we've watched a couple British ones. The one with the house on the cliff.
The Innocents? Or The Uninvited?
The Uninvited, that's it.
Yeah.
I think that there's something about this era of British horror that is really set. It's a different thing.
Yeah, they're 13 years apart. That was 44.
Wow, it was that early, man. That is crazy. But like remember the effects in that were also like incredible. It's like they're not messing around. Like they were like, I think what it is that there are in US films of that general era, especially genre films, I think that there was a risk at times that the filmmakers that they were okay with it being a little dorky or hokey looking, like they were okay with it. And this is editorializing, but it feels a little bit like they were like, yeah, it's a genre film, like doesn't have to be perfect. Whereas with the British ones of the same ilk, I really feel like they're taking it more serious in terms of like things like the effects.
Wait, like that actually you just reminded me, like what was one of our favorites? So we both said Buy It was actually the British film. It was made in Canada, the sci-fi film. What is that called?
Oh shit! What is it called? Oh my god!
The little brain people.
The man without a face. No, something
Fiend.
About
Fiend without a face.
The Fiend without a face.
Fiend without a face. Yeah.
Yes.
No, you're right. And I don't know if this is. Maybe this is more behind the scenes what worked for me, but it ends up there in the end. But that like British approach to filmmaking as a whole, where you get the sense of like, it's as much as I identify with and like to glorify, like, I just recommended Easy Rider, the kind of like, the America, we're gonna just cowboy in there and get it done, and it's going to be great. We're going to blob it up, any way we can. I also just as much like and respect the British sensibility of you show up at your proper work hours and get in and do a fine job and do your damnedest, So, but what especially I enjoy about that is when it's done with films that are with something like special effects or films that are especially out there, or just like the idea of that British whateverness applied to making a demon creature. It makes me so happy, I always like that, kind of like one of my I don't know what you'd call it, but something I like to like taking silly seriously. Or, in this case, taking scary seriously. It makes me so happy. And it looked great, the end result. And actually, you mentioned like the effect in The Uninvited, how the wispy ghost fading in and out effect. It reminded me a lot of when he's kind of getting blurry vision problems in this film.
Yeah.
That I wanted to shout out. That was a fun recurring thing in this film. Which
definitely.
I forget if it happened in this scene, but I really loved the scene. That was really akin to sort of probably the scene that reminded me most of Cat People as far as just being in a space and just feeling totally unnerved was when he's in that hallway getting into his hotel room.
Yeah.
The lighting is just, it's surreal. It's just creepy the way the lights are shitting out from each doorway, like yet all the doors are closed. So I don't know exactly what was going on. And like a sound effect starts playing in building and you think he's going to see something, but it's just his two other doctor buddies or whoever they are open the door and kind of break the spell, so to speak. But just him in that hallway alone, like that was probably the most affecting scene for me in a way, where I just sort of felt that supernatural presence and felt unnerved. It was really good.
Yeah, I think that throughout this movie, that's one of the sort of standout black and white compositional imagery scenes. But I'd say there's probably 5 or 6 really, really beautiful like composition shots, like really taking advantage of black and white, like the contrast sort of shadow play stuff. There's a sequence when he has broken into Carswell's house and is coming down the stairs. And man, there are some shots throughout that whole sequence that are so beautiful. Also, the creepiness of the hand following him, but the person's not there when you cut to the reverse. I love that.
I was just going to say, that was another great sequence. Yeah, we just said he's breaking into the house and coming down the stairs, and yeah, that hand following him, and then you immediately cut to the reverse, and there's just no one there, and you go, "What? Huh?"
I know,
what?
It's such a cool thing.
Oh, it's great. And then that just led us into the cat attack scene,
Oh
which
my God, the cat attack is
loved
no
so,
joke.
So
hilarious and
loved
awesome.
it so much. The cat like cross dissolve transforms into a leopard and starts attacking him.
Nothing pleases me more than a pantomime like animal attack with a stuffed animal.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, that was
so funny to watch.
That was in that other British, way more obvious in that other British movie we watched. What was that? Legend of Hell House.
Legend. There you go. Yeah,
had a cat attack. But this one, it was great. I mean, the attack was just long enough to be fun. They didn't overdo it in showing it or anything.
They
it
kept
was
him very much in the dark, which is really smart.
But it was so great because then we do have Carswell enter afterwards and just do the whole thing like, "Oh, was my cat bothering you?" Like, you know, like he knows.
I love how kind of just he's not hiding anything.
Yeah,
he's literally the whole time just being like, "Yeah, I'm a magician and a sorcerer, and I've cursed you, and like I cursed this room in case anybody like you decide to break into my house. Oh, did you meet up with my curse?
Right?
Well, how'd it go?"
Right. It's conflict can be so much more interesting. I mean, it's just a different thing, but conflict's really interesting and works so well for this kind of horror movie when the antagonist protagonist relationship isn't based on killing one another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's not what Dr. John Holden is trying to. He doesn't want you to kill this guy, you know.
Right.
And same with Carswell. He's not deliberately going out and killing anyone. It's just, hey, there's this curse on you, and you're gonna be dead in 2 days. Sorry, bud. You know, it's
this curse that I put on you.
Yeah, but until then, like, what, you know, we can talk about it.
Don't meddle.
Yeah.
Why you got to be a meddler?
Yeah, no, it's fun because then that gives you juicy scenes like that throughout. And I will say that it sounds like that's something you'll get to for what didn't work. But for me, I can say what worked is something that often doesn't work in a lot of these films, which is just the sort of getting stuck in these dialogue, people talking in room scenes. Like I was always enjoying those scenes just as much for the pacing and just like that little bit of romantic tension between the two leads. It was just funny. Like, well, it was great because she was just like, not right now, buddy, thanks. You know, and,
yeah.
But like just that feel of like it was just so much fun of them, of Joanna and Holden, Harrington and Holden. when he goes over for dinner at her place, and it's just like her house is so cool. There's a big thunderstorm outside. She's getting freaked out by it, so she's like, "Oh, let me take my candelabra and let us go to the den. It's a little more comfortable there." He's like reading passages from the creepy old book. It's just the fire's already going when they walk in. He like, when he's reading from the book, he turns to use the fire to light it. It's just all these little touches just make it homey and cool.
I
and
like that.
It makes it feel like I'm just with them and on part of this little adventure of theirs, figuring it out. I really loved all those scenes in between too.
Yeah.
Like that
good.
one.
What else? The ending?
The ending when the demon comes back. Of course, this is great. It was great. God, Tim, it looked so cool when he's like, we see him on the demon on the other side of the train, like pick him up, and it's like
that blew my mind.
It's like, I guess it's like a little doll person he's holding or something is the effect, but it looks so good. Just the way he's like whipping around and like he like claws into him and gnaws into him, and it's obscured by the train roaring by.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I loved all of that.
Yeah, me too.
And then the movie's over. It's just like, all right.
Yeah.
Roll the credits.
But it eases out though at the same time. The dead body's over there. And then they make
like,
the
he must have been hit by the train.
Though they make the deliberate decision, Harrington Holden, to not go over and look at it. So meanwhile, when you have the sort of the train people, the people working there run up to the body and say, it's like smoking. It's like, what just happened to this? But they're like, obviously, how did the train do this? He got hit by the train kind of thing. And we know that isn't what happened. And, one of the other guys was like, no, I saw him running alongside the train. He didn't come near it. So it just perfectly sets up that whole dichotomy of like, if something seems a little off or inexplicable, are you going to try to force the most obvious answer onto it? Or are you at least going to leave it open to just this is something weirder here. We have to at least accept that. Why can't we just say we don't know? And then come full circle, we do get a little character, arc at the end. Finally, Holden, Dr. John gives us a little leeway. We know a little from a little earlier, like he's pretty on board with believing this stuff after the dude jumps out the window and all that, which we'll talk about too. But just to end the movie on that theme of, he says, "Oh, it's better off not knowing, right? It's not important to know. I'd rather not know right now." That's the note they leave it on, where they don't need to go over and examine the body. They can just
the two of them basically like step backwards out of the room. They're like, "Yeah, we're just gonna back right out of this."
And why not? They could now try, I don't know, see if they can make it work or whatever. They got other things they could do now.
He can continue to awkwardly try to kiss her at like not the like appropriate point of time in time.
Hey, he was going to be dead in 2 days. I was feeling him every step of the way.
God.
He was like, well, if I'm going to die.
That
was fun when he it was just so tricky the way he did hand off the rune written down to Carswell in the jacket. And that was really fun too. Yeah, leading up to Carswell's death, we just explained how Carswell is the one in the train car freaking out, and we see he's lost the upper hand once they've found him. It was just fun seeing that reversal.
Yeah. No, it's good. I love that moment where it's such a like, ooh, got him.
Yeah.
Ooh, got him. And he goes running after the little piece of paper as it flies down the train.
Oh, right. All the stuff with the paper flying in this. So
that looked great.
Yeah.
Every time the paper was flitting around, man. It looked so good.
When it almost goes into the fire earlier.
I kept saying, like, I kept yelling at the screen. Because I was like, just go grab it. Just go grab it. Stop. It's going to go in the fire. Go get it. And they're like very casual. Oh, well, it's just a draft. I was like, shut the fuck up and grab it. It's almost in the fire. You don't know what you're messing with. Come on, man.
So another scene I just alluded to, dude jumping out the window. That dude was Rand Hobart, who's the one who technically survived the passing of the rune, is who he is. He's involved in some, forget exactly specifically. It was something like that.
Isn't he the dude who went crazy? Yeah, what exactly is his deal? Because remember, Holden goes and visits that guy's family,
right?
But why did he go crazy?
I think, I mean, it was being given the rune.
Because he was accused of the murder,
yeah,
but not convicted of the murder because he went mad, and then the cop.
Here we go. Under hypnosis, the suspect Hobart reveals to Holden that he was, quote, chosen to die by having a runic parchment passed to him, but avoided death by passing it back to the person who had given it to him.
Who was who?
When Holden shows
Carswell?
Yeah, Carswell, yeah.
Okay, so he foiled Carswell, and then what? Carswell cursed him and made him go crazy?
I guess so, whatever. But it was so great how he freaked out when he saw the rune. He didn't want to be near it. Like after finally getting rid of it, that was the thing to bust him out of his catatonic state,
right?
And that just to see that flip of him going all out crazy, screaming, and then running and jumping out of a window after like a first try. The window, like the first break didn't quite do it. The second one, he makes it through. That was great. That dude's performance was great. And what was his name? Brian Wilde. And then the scene with his family too was great. Because like just to have our Dr. Holden character who just doesn't believe in any of this step into a room and have to be really respectful towards these people because he knows the situation that the son is in, all of a sudden being the minority in people who believe in all this stuff and having to be respectful of it in them.
Well, it's very much, not that I know much about this because I tried to go down these rabbit holes a little bit, but there's, kind of a tradition in European pagan folklore, largely among like farmers, of this thing that's sort of considered like right-hand path magic, where it's this folk magic, right? Runes and symbols and stuff. And it was classified as evil and whatever, but just because it was the pre-existing way that people or belief system that people had that wasn't Christianity, and so it got turned into this thing of like, oh, that's Satan worship, it's evil. It's like, not really. It's just this other version of mysticism or whatever. And I think it's really cool. There's something about it that has always kind of like felt fascinating and interesting to me. It became very prominent in the in my region of upstate New York. In the like early 1800s, it was a huge boon of this like right-hand path magic sort of folklore magic stuff that was all over the place. And people like John Smith, the guy who started the Mormons, he's from where I grew up, basically, the area. Like, there were all of these people around there that were hawking these sort of cons and taking advantage of like poor farmers who had this belief system and like swindling them. And so there's something historically just really fascinating to me about that whole world and that time period. So, and obviously this doesn't take place in that time period, but that family, the Hobart family, is so much a kind of callback to that, that era and that like demographic of people and how they sort of sit outside of modern contemporary belief. And it's cool. I just think there's something really fun about it.
Yeah.
It's also kind of in that movie with Boris Karloff, the one that's remember the family of farmers that he
wait, one that we didn't watch it.
Black Sabbath.
Oh, that we did. Yeah.
You know, and he goes back to the family, and there's this sort of like farm kind of mysticism, lore, magic thing going on. It's that stuff. There's something about all of that I've always found really cool. And then every time we run into it, I'm like, damn, that's fun. It's exciting.
Yeah, this connection to the past via people of the present.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how you see that in I mean, Hexen is just all that embodied.
Dude, so good.
Right.
Give me a break.
Great. You know what? I think that's about it for my list. I mean, I really did just love it all. Just again, like actors, I thought were great. All of them were really great with and Carswell. Though they were all great, I think Carswell just was given the most to do. Was the juiciest role in a way.
No question.
So
Absolutely,
it's fun to see Niall McInnes be able to really chew that up. It was great.
Yep. Cool.
All right. Well, then with that, we shall move on to our next section. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
I want to say one thing about those scenes that I mentioned, the sort of mystery scenes. I think it's fine. Like it doesn't hurt the movie, but there's a part of me that felt like those scenes could have been placed in slightly different sections of the movie that would have made the mystery unfold, I think, in a slightly more exciting way for me. Like when we learn that the demon is like, you know, that people who have seen, or the one witness who saw the demon had drawn a picture of it. And then the cop is sort of like, yeah, it looks like very similar to this demon that's like we've, you know, in all these different cultures. It's the same sort of demon. I kind of feel like I want that scene, that like education scene, to be later in the movie. You know, where it's like it's a discovery rather than an exposition.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie makes it more of an exposition of like, okay, well, you've seen it, so let's explain it, and then we can carry on with the story. But I was like, damn, I felt like that should have come later. And conversely, I kind of felt like the hypnosis scene, the Rand Hobart scene, could have come earlier. Maybe not the reveal of the rune part, but like the scene itself.
You're right. As far as a hypnosis scene, it's much more of a sort of leaves it to the imagination, is like hinting at this bigger something, still questioning whether it's real or not. And
now,
then,
if we had, like, let's just say for hypothetical's sake, that you had gotten the hypnosis scene with all the people there and everything and whatever, minus the ending of that scene. And it was a way for Holden and Joanna to sort of get further along down their quest. And then once they realize something else, whatever that might be, maybe it's the runes, and put it together that Hobart had the runes at one point. They go back to him and he's still catatonic, and then you can have him see it and jump out the window, right? Like, I feel like you could have split that scene into two at two very specific parts of the movie. Essentially, it would be, I think if you were using kind of a standard structural thing, it would be like the midpoint and then the turn into the third act would be the actual death. Something to that effect. It just felt like I was like, ooh, maybe this would be better this other way, but maybe not. And then what was the other one I mentioned?
The drawings?
No, there were three scenes that I mentioned really added to the mystery part of things. Oh God, I don't know. Whatever. Doesn't matter. But those two scenes stuck out for me for sure, about like maybe reorganizing the structure would have made it more exciting. And I think the point being is that there were chunks in the middle that, like I had mentioned, that I felt like we were talking the plot instead of actually having a scene. And I think reorganizing those other scenes might have helped with that. But who knows?
Got
what
it.
didn't work for you, Ryan?
Just nothing really.
Did it? See, it really bothered me how kind of like side character-y Joanna felt.
I didn't feel that way when watching it.
Really?
I
just felt like she was this sort of
like something about when they first the first interaction they have where I forget exactly what it is, but it gave the sense where it was like he's kind of like trying to step in and say, this is what we're going to do. And she sort of is like, yeah, but no. And then it felt like, I don't know, it felt like she was the one kind of leading the way and he was the one just kind of like playing detective the whole time. And I like that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just sort of the...
Like, while of course still under the visual conformity of, yeah, he's like grabbing her and crap like that she has to put up with.
Like in the wind scene before the wind picks up, they just, as a writing sort of tool, they just get her out of there. You know, like the mom comes up and is like, do you like ice cream? And she's like, yeah, I love it. And she's like, well, come with me and we'll give you a treat. And then she's just, that's their device to get Holden and Carswell together alone.
Right, the men together, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that it's things like that coupled with Holden being such a sourpuss, but then always sort of trying to angle in to like, be like, you're really pretty, or hey, maybe I should give you a kiss, or hey, just... that dynamic, I know it's of the era, but that dynamic is just so bleh to me that when I see it, I start to really disengage. I kind of just go, oh man, I don't want to.
Yeah. So
I think that's my biggest, I mean, honestly, that is my biggest issue with this movie, without a doubt. If that dynamic was different, or if she had been the lead, like if she had been the Holden character, I would have been much more on board.
Yeah, what is this
so
movie?
Be it.
65 years old, something like
know,
that.
Exactly. What do you expect?
I think I have enough like I just see that for like I don't feel like I'm getting caught up in that worldview when I'm watching it. So I just see him as just this lame behind the times, you know, conforming to the times kind of guy, and like him not being likable is it makes it all that much more fun for me to sort of like wait for that turn to happen when he does freak out, or, you know, he does start to believe.
Okay. So
because you sort of tie that association together, like his being a meh person is also tied to his skepticism, you know?
Right. Yes. But here's the thing. I need you to make me feel better about his character arc. Because there's a part of me that feels like he doesn't come around to like buying in until after he's killed Carswell. And I feel like that's like, if he's such a skeptic and a non-believer, then passing the runes back to Carswell, it feels...
No, I thought it happened with the dude under hypnosis. Like, I felt by the end of that scene, like after he's jumped out the window and we go back to him, I'm like, okay, now he's on board.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't feel it really. Like, I didn't feel like a big like click in kind of like, you know what it is? And this is just because it's the style of the era that you didn't really have this type of scene in back then. But it's missing a scene, an introspective scene with him by himself. It just doesn't have it where he kind of goes, holy crap.
Yeah.
I've been wrong. You know, and he doesn't need to say this, but where we get to see him question everything for real on his own.
Yeah.
And I think if you had that, then I'd kind of be more like on board, everybody all aboard the train so that he can slip Carswell the thing. And then we feel a little bit better. But having said all that, he slips it to Carswell and just, that's like sealing his fate, right? Like, does he not think that he's going to get killed then?
he's got to get it off of him, I guess. Yeah, after I said earlier how, it's fun a relationship where it's not about killing one another, but he kind of does do that to him at the end. But I mean,
it's a little like
it's for me, it's like the only way I can, I don't know, I could almost feel like justified in like doing that because it's when you think of it, when you disconnect it from the death that they're going to die itself, then it's a curse. And you just think of it in those terms, like he put a curse on me. And now the only way to get it off is to give it to someone else. So who's the least reprehensible person I could give it to?
No,
the one who gave it to me. No. The least like as if it's most justifiable. Like if someone has to die from this curse, it should be whoever made it in the first place.
So so this makes it clear to me. Here's what I think is missing from this movie. Not just the introspective thing. Here, you can couple it. You need to see him have this introspective moment and then tie it back to his friend was murdered. If we don't really get that tie back around where he gets to go, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to save myself? And like, we know, like, I feel like you need to hammer home that it's revenge rather than just getting the curse off of him.
Well, I think that's a different movie. And actually that could be maybe what would really help it, and especially for like how you were seeing it. But I could get on board with this too. You just called him his friend, but I think the guy who died, the professor at the beginning, it was just like an associate or like someone he was going to learn that or is just going to speak with.
I mean, it's a colleague enough, right? Like colleague, but at minimum.
There wasn't any sense of like sadness or remorse or anything like that aside from just that initial surprise that he had died. So you do make them friends, and I felt like that could have really helped just give him a little something that maybe he could have sympathized with.
Right, because at its core, this movie is a who and how did Professor Harrington die.
Well, yeah, to make it a who killed my friend I was about to see versus who killed this guy I was about to meet.
Right. Well, and that's why I say if you made Joanna the lead, or if you had her driving that narrative more, you would have this because she's his niece. Like, she's related to.
I won't disagree with you there. That'd be a better movie if it was just told from her point of view, for sure. But as to go, all of this stuff, like I agree with all of these things you're saying. That like, yeah, I could see that working better. I would have liked that, but nothing like nothing was as far as not working for me.
Sure, gotcha. Well, this is like, as you said in the beginning, we dismember and then we sew it back together, kind of Frankenstein style. So that's my attempt at sewing it back together with a different limb or two.
Yeah, great.
But yeah, other than that, I think it's super solid. Like, it's not bad. It's good in spite of that stuff that I think it's a taste thing in a lot of ways, really.
Well, I think it's great despite those things.
You did it.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
All right. Last section, things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
I have one.
What's your thing of note, Tim?
Dr. Carswell, who, as we said, actually his name is Patrick Niall McGinnis, but I guess his professional name was Niall McGinnis. He played Zeus in Jason and the Argonauts. And that movie was so big, man, for my childhood. Come on.
No, I loved it. I watched it all the time as a kid.
I love that movie so much.
I remember buying the DVD at Suncoast Video. I watched it over and over. I loved it.
I was like, I know this dude. I know him. I can't figure out where I know him from. And then I saw it and I was like, that's the ticket.
He's Zeus.
Zeus.
Awesome.
What else you got?
It was interesting. I did go down there's a whole lot of interviews and special features on the disc too of the edition that we rented. I was watching. And it was interesting how there was mixed stuff. Like there wasn't a clear record Tourneur was on about how for and how against he was against, showing the demon. So that wasn't clear. But the production designer, Ken Adams, was certainly not crazy about showing the demon, nor was our star, Dana Andrews, happy about showing the demon. This was all done sort of after, it wasn't in the original script and was done after the fact by producer Hal Chester. It was added on after.
Interesting.
And it was funny, how hearing, like I just watched or listened to this little interview portion snippet with Dana Andrews, like in the 70s, talking about this film. And it was funny because like the interviewer was clearly a huge fan of the movie. And Dana Andrews, he called Hal Chester, quote, a little schmuck. And it was great because his voice was like just like him. He's like, Hal was a little schmuck. He's telling Tourneur how to direct and So he said stuff like Hal Chester was coming and not only was he mad at him and thought he ruined the movie for adding the monster, but on set, he said he didn't like how Hal Chester felt like he was like telling Tourneur kind of like what to do or how to direct and stuff like that. And an example of that was in the Wikipedia was that one argument was about the wind scene. Tourneur tried to convince Chester to replace 2 electric fans with 2 aeroplane engines. When Chester hesitated, star Dana Andrews threatened to leave the picture if Chester did not let, quote, the director direct the picture. So wow. It was Hal Chester. There you go. The film was adapted from the M.R. James story Casting the Runes. Now, M.R. from 1911. So
cool.
We're talking about, this was updated for modern day 1957, from a 1911 story. But M.R. James is kind of known as a ghost writer. Not the term ghost writer, as in write about the paranormal, supernatural. He wrote known for writing ghost stories. And it was kind of fun because apparently how this story started or where it was first heard was M.R. James went to and had a relationship with King's College in Cambridge. And he was in some kind of club there that would get together like close to Christmas and they'd all tell each other ghost stories and stuff. So this was one of the stories that was a favorite that he'd tell, and it was called Casting the Runes. Then it appeared in print in 1911.
That's very, very much like the movie we watched about Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
What the hell was that one called? Man, we're all
Gothic.
Oh yeah, Gothic. Yeah, it's got that vibe. That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun to hear kind of what the filmmaker's relationship to the paranormal is and whatnot, and see if and how that informs a work. Like I think we mentioned on the show before. God, what's his? I'm not remembering things. Who's the Haunting of Hill House dude? Gerald's made all those things. Made the Shining sequel. Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, Flanagan. Yeah. Who's like, I don't really believe in any of this.
Yeah, it comes down hard like that. Jacques Tourneur. He said to have been more open and believed in the supernatural. The specifics that this person was alluding to, he wasn't sure about, except for he knew Tourneur he believed in the idea that there was just more to the material world than we're able to see. So in his films, Cat People, like what he was really interested in, and what you see in this film too, he was always interested in sort of presenting another layer of reality, or like where different realities intersect kind of thing. So it's fun to see someone who at least is open to that, then putting that vision. And that's really where his filmmaking approach too was, where rather than treating these things like, oh, we're making a motion picture here and are going to show these monsters, he's always taking the approach of, how would this thing look in real life, or how would this story, if it was true, play out in real life? So like a cat woman, cursed, like that, presenting that in a realistic way, that was his approach, which I thought was,
he's
fun.
Done some really amazing films. Cat People, City Under the Sea. Let's see.
He did a whole bunch of shorts that apparently are cool too.
He did I Walked with a Zombie. This one, obviously, Night of the Demon. Any others stick out? Yeah, but some really good stuff. It's cool.
I had a question for you, Tim, when we were talking about how you loved the sort of, talking about upper state New York and that connection. I mentioned that, like, people that are a connection to an old time.
Yeah.
So this was made in 1957 based on a story published in 1911. And it's cool to think that you could have this subset of a certain kind of ilk represented by this family he goes and see serving that function 50 years apart, right? Essentially. Mm-hmm. Now, will we always be able to give or take next couple hundred years? Do you think we'll always be able to find people who feel like a link to a far, far past, or is that past only becoming more recent?
Is that past only becoming more recent? What do you mean?
Meaning, like, these people who give off connection to witches 1800s vibe that that family in 57 was still representing. Do you think those people still exist, or will still exist?
Will always exist to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a form of traditionalism, right? Like, humans and families in particular are, they're the ones who are carrying on the traditions and passing them on. And I think that two things. One, that way of it continuing on will always exist to some degree. But also, I think culturally, we keep looping back around. You see the sort of undulation of fascination with that type of stuff. And so that, that plays a role in continuing on. Maybe it's like how, for me, for example, like, I was raised kind of Christian, loose Christian, because my dad's a scientist, so he was like whatever about it. And my mom was sort of more about the community aspect of going to church and less about the dogmatic aspect of it. But I now am totally way more interested in things like paganism, Satanism, and like the implication of that in a modern time, because there are people who theologically can look at stuff from a broader stance and then sort of pull from those things and come to a totally new way of looking at, I guess, if you want to call it spirituality, but like, or just how to live as a human being, like how to treat other people. And I think it's just, to me, it's more fascinating the more you learn about the various ways historically that people have looked at religion or mysticism or explaining the things that we don't know how to explain, any of the above. We come to other conclusions or new conclusions or some amalgamation of conclusions. And so depending on how into it certain people are, that can create a new pathway for a traditionalism that starts up. So I think that there's sort of cycles of it that can and do exist. And the more we have interconnectivity and access to, knowledge about these things in a historical context, the more we'll form new ideas that will be related to some of that stuff that will carry on. And I think, it all, like, in other words, I don't think we're going to come to a time where everybody just goes, yeah, remember back like 300 years ago when people like believed in religion? Like, I don't think we're ever going to become a people of complete atheist, like cynicism. I just don't think so. I think there's always going to be a desire to have a sort of some form of mystical lore that's based in tradition that people can attach to.
How about, yeah. That's
Was
cool.
that a lot of word salad that I just spewed out?
No, I was
Or did that
following
make
you.
sense?
But tell me if this makes sense. I want to put a different little spin on what I want to ask here. Taking, like, even though it plays a part in it, taking religion and belief out of it, just as far as a sense that a people give you, like if you were to be in a time machine, get dropped off into 1860 into a family, and like just like they all looked at you. There's a word that's very much in vogue, but I think for a reason. There's a vibe there, right? And what I'm wondering is I'm wondering about the continuation, the through line of said vibes, and what helps them carry forth and continue, and what could possibly break them. Could that vibe be recaptured by, like what you're saying, some, people just sort of coming back to a certain perspective that those people have and looking like them, and that's true to the source of the vibe? Or does it have to be, or is it a combination of like a direct ancestral continuation of or a cultural, heritage or something like that,
That's an interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I do think that, like, how do I put this? I think that, what would you call it? Let's just call it, I don't want to just call it mysticism, but like a way of viewing the world that is sort of transcending just the, like, the certitude of what's in front of us. I think that will always exist. So that vibe will always exist. What we don't know is how prevalent the version of that vibe will be. Because it could be really we could tip into the prevalence of that vibe being like super malevolent, like super, super ignorant and like shitty. Or that vibe could tip into us becoming way more connected with things that I think you and I relate to, which is like this feeling of a bigger presence or a bigger meaning when we get closer in contact with the natural world. And so, more likely than not, we'll get a spectrum of that. We have a spectrum of that.
Yeah. I think it speaks to, I guess, tie it all together, the power of film, that we can just put all these certain elements up on screen. Actors can channel a certain something, and then we're there back in, like, I'm just thinking of Inherent Vice and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, putting us back in those times. It's one of my favorite parts in Inherent Vice is they're walking to a party and the narrator says something about there was a certain kind of atmosphere or a distinct atmosphere, and you feel it. And it's incredible. But I guess pertaining to my question, that is it, like, let's say you were just to throw a party that was like a 1970 themed party where like no technology allowed that's from after that year. Everyone has the right clothing kind of thing. Music's only, can't be made after that. House, down to every single detail. Is that the strength of that vibe and energy and feel? Is that best only going to then be captured in a picture or a film that is then, further framing it? Or could you actually be at that party and not have any kind of sense of artifice holding it back?
I think the second one is possible because I went to that party.
Yeah.
Around June, I think it was. It was like the 6 months from October, so whatever that would have been. November, December, January, February, March, April. So it was like late April. And it was a like anti-Halloween party. And it was also a 70s party. So it was so weird. And it was also in the Hollywood Hills, which is like, this is like the only time I've ever been to like a quote unquote Hollywood Hills party. But it was in a house that was probably built in like 1960 on sort of the hillside with like the stilts underneath, like that kind of vibe. The only music being played was being played by bands, like rock bands that were just covering 70s music. The DJ was just playing, like when the bands weren't playing, was just playing 70s music. There was like a lava lamp, psychedelic projector, like the whole thing. Everybody's dressed up in 70s clothing, but also with Halloween costumes. And like bunch of people were doing acid. Like it was just wild. I like the friend that I met there rode up on a Vespa and what do you call it? Like her motorcycle helmet was like sequined, like shiny, like almost like a disco ball. I was like, I don't know where I am. I was like, this is literally a time capsule. I've just stepped into another time.
So you felt it all coming through authentically.
So much. Everybody there was like that vibe. And it wasn't a put on. Like that's who these people were. Like they're the Hollywood rock and roll, like sort of people that are living that life.
Yeah. You think that everyone maybe does have a predilection or not at all to like, maybe, people can also be truly presentists too. But like a lot of times people do just have a fascination with a certain period of history. And you wonder if like, let's say this casting in whether a movie or a party, that means they especially like look at home in that era too, in a way.
Absolutely. No, I think there's something to be said about that. Like we know people who were like, that person is like 1945 personified.
And you're saying you get enough of those people together in the same room, then that just amplifies it. And all of a sudden, I have stepped into 1945.
Yes. I think that is something that can exist.
I want to go to all those parties, man.
I'd love to go back to one of those. It was so random. It was like such a, I don't know. My friend who no longer lives in LA was like, "Oh, hey, you want to go to this weird party tonight?" It's like, sure.
Always say yes if someone asks you that.
Yep. All right, you want to hear my my wonderful Stonehenge story?
Yes.
All right, to wrap it up so that wrap it all back around.
And then I have one little last thing of note.
So. Perfect. All right, so my grandfather, Bob, we called him Wally. So Wally was, he enlisted into World War II, and his, I think it was because he was going into Michigan Institute of Technology, so the MIT up there. And a professor there basically had a kind of an inside line on how we were going to approach the war and he said, "You guys, we have to delay you guys, or else, if our assumptions are right, you will just be in that first wave when we invade Europe," which ended up being true. And so and so a bunch of young guys who enlisted were in that first wave and like hit the beaches of Normandy and got mowed down, right? Like thousands of soldiers died. So this guy suggested to my grandfather and the other guys his age in that town to wait like 2 weeks or something like that, which delayed their enlistment by like a month, which put them behind when they were sent over to England to train. And so they were trying to catch up on training. So they would go out in the middle of the night. My grandfather was an engineer and explosives guy. And they would take tanks and just like barrel around the countryside to like try and get familiar with driving these tanks around. He says one night they're just plowing around the hills, the country hills, in the middle of the night. So like it's pretty much pitch black. They're like, we need to know how to do this. And off in the distance up on a hill that they're heading toward, they see a light. And so they go toward it to see what it is. And it's this old dude, old British, codger, holding a lantern. And he's and they're no joke, they are in the middle of just nowhere countryside. And the guy's flipping out. He's waving his hands around, waving the lantern around, getting all freaked out. It's like screaming for them to stop. And they stop and they're like, what is going, like, what do you do? Who are you? What are you doing out here? Huh? Like a weird, phantom. And the guy's like, you can't go that way. There is an incredibly important, like, monument that I'm supposed to look after, and you're going to just run over it. It's like right over this rise. And they're, it's pitch black, and they're like, what? Like, what? They didn't know what he's talking about. And he's like, Stonehenge is right there. And they're like, we don't know what Stonehenge is. Nobody ever heard of Stonehenge. It wasn't like a known thing. But they were like 30 yards away from literally running their tank into Stonehenge. And so like when I was a little kid, I noticed that I had never heard this story until I was like probably like 25 or something like that. So my whole life, I just sort of happened to notice that my grandfather had a lot of Stonehenge paraphernalia, like little toy Stonehenges and like postcards and posters and like books on it and all this stuff. After the fact, he became kind of like obsessed because he's like, I almost knocked Stonehenge over with a tank.
I think my favorite part of that is that the guy was justified in guarding it. Like
so this means that back then some dude stood out there in the middle of the night on a nightly basis.
Can you imagine like for you standing there for 3 years and then the night comes, a tank almost drives it over and you're glad you're there? Stop. Like,
how insane is that? Anyways, that's my Stonehenge story. There you go.
Great. Yeah, and it was interesting when I got the context that for this film, starting with Stonehenge, like they put in the context, when this came out, people like didn't know what it was. So now when we look at it, it's easier. Or I mean, we more default just have the lens like, Stonehenge, we think tourist attraction versus the air of mystery it actually holds, which was still very much there. When this film was released. So the last little thing I had was one on our favorite little touches, Tim, the hand following him inside. How cool was that? Again, so just what a great little touch of, was it supernatural? What was going on there? Who was that? I don't know. So apparently Tourneur, he had very specific casting in mind or he spent a lot of time casting those hands. Wasn't anyone else. Really? Wasn't anyone else who was in the film in any other way. But he ended up casting a man who was about to die.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's cool and weird and freaky.
Yep. There you go.
Sweet.
Take that for as you will.
We'll all be damned.
Great. All right, Tim. Well, do you have any recommendations for us this week?
Yes. And I think it's important for me to clarify that this recommendation is I think it's an Irish film. It's really good. But I was under the impression that it was pronounced Calibre because, I see BRE on the end of a word and I just think it's fancier. It's just Calibre. It's just Calibre. It's the British spelling of Calibre, which makes a lot of sense because of what's in the film. But I will not tell you. You just need to watch the movie. If you know what's going to happen, it really undercuts the effectiveness of the movie. But it's on Netflix. Watch it. It's super messed up and super thriller, suspenseful, awesome movie. Calibre.
Cool. Calibre. Great.
Spelled Calibre.
I haven't been watching so much. Just been working a gig here, keeping busy. But throughout it all, these last couple weeks, I've just become kind of obsessed listening to the Mamas and the Papas over and over. They have like 5 albums, I think. And I've just been cycling through those, and they're great, and it's fun hearing like what they do to make an album versus just sort of their top hits. Mm-hmm. It was coming at me from like different areas where, a couple of their songs are in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I love. Our friend suggested I watch what was that movie? As like a documentary on Echo in the Canyon. They're featured in that. And then they popped up from one other avenue too, had sort of popped up in my periphery. But anyway, I've just been listening to them. They're great. So I'm going to recommend a band. They're only like active for a few years too. Check them out if you haven't. The Mamas and the Papas. Oh, Chungking Express. I just watched that and it's great. And has California Dreamin' featured throughout. There's a fun little, if you do, maybe this, I don't want to make this the recommendation, but on YouTube, there's like an era 2000 kind of VH1 style documentary called the Mamas and the Papas Straight Shooter. You can watch, and there's a great story in there about how they became the Mamas and the Papas. And it was quite the adventure that they went on leading up to their formation. So it's fun learning about them all too. Give them a listen. Give them a spin.
Well, cool, dude.
Great. Believe it's
pretty sure it's my turn.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what you pull here, as always.
Diving right in. I'm pulling out this one right here in my hand, which is called At Midnight, I'll Take Your Soul.
Cool.
1964.
Great.
Sweet.
I was actually just looking at what we still have in the hat, and this was one of the ones I was like, I looked up today and like, what if we watch this next?
Well, you're in luck. We're going to watch it next.
Features the first appearance of Coffin Joe of the Coffin Joe trilogy. Brazil's first horror film.
Oh, okay.
Cool. From 1964. Great. Well,
sweet.
Until then, you can find us wherever you found us. Our big ask is that you tell a friend if you think they'd enjoy being here too. I'm Ryan McDuffie. This year with me was Tim Aslin, and we acknowledge and thank our mixer and master, Brendan Welch.
Thanks, Brendan.
Great. Well, I think that's it. So in closing, we hope that you don't die at 10 p.m. in 2 days at the hands of a demon. Either way, thanks for listening.
That's right. And we will see you next time if you don't die. Goodbye.